is a real, and it's interesting, we're in this crazy moment where the demographics of the country are moving against the right, but their rhetoric is ramping up, right? With this xenophobic, increasingly violent stuff, and we had that moment last year where the Nazis, you know, the alt-right jumped the shark, as they say, like went too far and killed Heather Heyer and really badly injured 19 people. But I mean, they're still out there, and there's even more, I think, more dangers are the less overtly racist ones, like the Proud Boys, who were like civic nationalists and who were like explicitly anti-racist, like, no, we're not into this racism stuff, I don't hear about the Jewish question, whatever. And it's like, you can be gay and be a Proud Boy, but they're like really reactionary on gender. And they're thugs, and they have really retrograde.
And they're here in Nebraska now, too.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and then, yeah, so there's a campaign for the hearts and minds of the population, which, and one does feel that these things, they're important during elections, but also increasingly as there's going to be more and more crises and more disasters. And also, I think, you know, as I think about these disasters and to some extent returning also to my first book and my thoughts is that it is so dangerous to have this overbuilt police system, to have this class of people who are cops, security guards, contractors, and just all of this equipment. It's scary, and it's important as regards disasters, because I went down to New Orleans right when Katrina happened. I arrived like 3 days after the storm, the day before the 82nd Airborne arrived, and it was like, what was interesting was a lot of these small towns gave aid as they could. They wanted to help out from all over the South, and they sent the only kind of resources they had. They didn't have some sort of, you know, volunteer disaster response team. You know, they didn't have like a medical corps, you know, that they had ready to go. They didn't have any of that stuff. What they did have lying around were armored personnel carriers of the federal government, APCs, armored personnel carriers, that the federal government sent them, you know, machine guns, and there was all over New Orleans are these like, you know, small town like SWAT teams. And they're like, what are you guys doing? They're like, well, we're just, you know, we just got in the car, man. We just took what we had, and you know, here we are. You know, it's like, what do you guys have? It's like, we have a chainsaw, and you know, we brought our guns, and you know, and it's like there was nobody to fight. It was like nothing. They didn't have the tools, they didn't have the training, they didn't have inflatable boats. They're just like there. And at first, I thought, oh my God, there's all these cops, and this is a terrible race war. They're here to like repress the, you know, the people of New Orleans. It was like actually the New Orleans police had that quite under control. They were quite good at killing their own people, and a lot of these people meant well. They looked like this occupying army, and it was really, I had this picture, like, oh wow, man, we are, you know, we're seeding the future. All of this anti-war on drugs, war on terror stuff, it's like creating a kind of path-dependent militarization of whatever situation arises. And so that's I think, really important. What is the management of populations that are displaced? Are people going to manage themselves? Is it going to be a civilian management of relocation? Or is every crisis going to be militarized? And currently we're on track for every crisis being militarized. Yes?
Do you think we ought to be about the business of integrating these radical groups? Sit in on their meetings in a friendly, loving way, and try to encourage them to think about, well, but we're all relatives. We got to take care of everybody. If one goes down, we all go down. Can we do more kinder work? If we're in that group raising these kind of questions, we have to feel sorry for these folks sitting around and doing all this hate. That's a misery. And to feel compassion for them and to try to help them be better, be all they can be all. To make a decision, I'm going to infiltrate, not a spy. Maybe you identify yourself. I'm this and that, and I like people. I like to be in a diverse group. Do you mind if I join you to be a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. In my work, I just saw a very interesting film called White Right Meeting the Enemy. It's on Netflix, so you can rent it. And has anyone seen it? It's actually, no. It's like I think the woman is like Afghan or Pakistani refugee to the UK. She came to prominence because she received like hate mail because of a BBC interview. So she comes to the US before Charlottesville. She infiltrates with not the Proud Boys, civic nationalists who are really all about gender. And I think, as a side note, I think actually the left has to think a little bit about what to do with young men. They can't just be scolded. It's like they also have to be harnessed and put into things. Like Civilian Conservation Corps, right? Like 19-year-old guys need to like plant trees inside of them. Be tired, like dogs, tired of the mountain. But it was amazing. And so she hooks up with like, I forget what the party, but they're straight up Nazi parties, right? Or one is League of the South, and one is like a Nazi party. And just watch the film; it's kind of incredible. Like she's like, and she's very friendly with them, and they grow to like her. And then she's like, do you think? She's like, let me read you some of the emails. What do you think of this email? And you can see the guys get visibly upset. Like, well, even though like I'm for a white ethno-national state, like I like you, and I don't like that email. And so she's just like very politely like. She goes out with one guy, and he's like throwing out like hate messages in this little Ziploc plastic bag with like rice to weight it down, and some like stupid, hateful, anti-Semitic message throwing these at like synagogues, and she's in the backseat being like, "It's very wrong what you're doing. I don't think you should do that. It's very mean. You're hurting a little girl like me is going to be hurt by that." And he's just like kind of like increasingly just. I mean, not to say like, oh, all these Nazis are all just really misunderstood. There is an element to this which is like it's the socialism of fools, And one of these characters, it's like you can see he's like almost gets it. He's in Detroit, and he's like he almost understands what the problem is, right? But it's like for him, it's Jews and immigrants, and not like the 1% that destroyed Detroit.
Well, we've had that take place in Nebraska. There was a rabbi in Lincoln, Nebraska, who was threatened to be killed, and it was from a Nazi, and they ended up taking that man. I mean, it's a long story and a wonderful book, and I'm embarrassed I can't say it. Maybe somebody can help me with the name of the book, but it was written right here in Nebraska, and the family, the rabbi and his wife, took this Nazi finally into their home. They went to his house, and he was behind the door with a submachine gun when they went there. And miraculously, they found out the rabbi and the Nazi had similar upbringings where they were treated very cruelly as they were growing up, and together they ended up taking this fella into their home. And the story is, of course, that they took care of him until he died. He was an amputee. And, but anyway, that happened, and they were going to blow up one of the synagogues in Lincoln, and so that's a Nebraska story. But it did this thing. They befriended the Nazi.
There's limits to this, of course, and the film actually, White Right, shows this, which is like Richard Spencer is there, and Richard Spencer is not confused about anything, and Richard Spencer was not traumatized. There's no backstory about how he was abused and is full of anger. Richard Spencer is like, the scene with him is totally revealing to us. These like, frat boy types, drinking whiskey late at night, and he's just like, don't you understand? Elites have to run things, and I need to be elites. Like he just sort of explains it like that's what you'd think Richard Spencer really would say if he would just be honest about stuff. And so it's not all misunderstood, right? Some of them are really clearly like, we are trying to engineer social relations so that we can maintain our power, period. Yes.
Yeah. I would like to point out something. The militarization, you were talking about our police forces. The Anti-Defamation League is giving funds to send police departments to Israel to learn how to militarize. That's frightening. And they have already sent some of our ICE people there for training. Wow. That's militarized. That's scary.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to bring Christian back next year.
Yeah.